Forget the layoff headlines for a second. Those are just the opening act. The real question nobody wants to answer clearly is this: what actually happens when AI can do not one job, but many at the same time across an entire economy? Best case, worst case, and the one outcome that experts think is actually most likely are three very different futures. Let's walk through all three.
Here is why 2027 specifically keeps coming up. Entry-level hiring at major tech companies has already fallen nearly 50% from pre-pandemic levels. One of the economists most cited on this topic, Darren Acemoglu, has said plainly that the real disruption becomes visible around 2027, not because AI suddenly gets smarter overnight, but because that is when the slow bleed finally shows up in the hiring data everyone can see.
So, let's open all three doors, one at a time, starting with the one that gets the most clicks. The worst case. At the most extreme end, a handful of forecasters have floated a genuinely alarming number that AI combined with humanoid robots could replace up to 99% of human work within 5 years, with, in their words, no real contingency plan from governments or companies. That is the outlier prediction. Very few serious economists think it is likely, but it sets the emotional ceiling for this entire conversation. A more grounded, but still severe, warning came from Anthropic's own CEO, who told reporters that AI could eliminate half of all entry-level white-collar jobs within 5 years, concentrated in finance, law, consulting, and tech. His argument was simple. AI is not replacing one job. It is becoming a general substitute for entry-level labor itself. The worst case is not really about unemployment numbers alone. It is about concentration. BlackRock's own CEO has warned of the real risk that AI widens wealth inequality, rewarding a small circle of insiders enormously, while the disruption for everyone else lands hardest and fastest. Some economists have compared the shape of that inequality to the era right before World War II. And when researchers ask the uncomfortable follow-up question, what happens if a mass unemployment shock actually outpaces existing safety nets? The honest answer from most of them is the same. Historically, sudden economic shocks without a landing pad are exactly the conditions that produce serious social and political instability. That is door number one, fully open. Now let's walk through the opposite door, the one venture capitalists and optimistic economists keep pointing to. The optimist case leans on something called the Jevons Paradox, a 160-year-old economic observation. When something gets dramatically cheaper and more efficient, people do not use less of it. They find new uses for it and consume far more overall. Applied to AI, cheaper intelligence does not shrink the total amount of work in the economy. It expands what becomes economically worth doing in the first place. And here is the twist almost nobody expected. In 2025, the roughly 100 occupations most exposed to AI automation did not shrink first. They actually grew faster than the rest of the labor market, with rising real wages. The early data suggests augmentation, humans working alongside AI, is currently outpacing outright replacement. There is also a very physical side to this boom that rarely makes the headlines. Building the data centers that power all this AI requires enormous numbers of electricians, construction workers, and civil engineers, Real jobs created directly by the technology that is supposedly destroying jobs. One prominent venture capital firm has gone as far as calling the entire AI job apocalypse narrative, quote, unhelpful marketing, bad economics, and worse history, end quote, arguing every major technology shift in history followed this same panic then adjustment pattern. The World Economic Forum's own projection backs a version of this up. 170 million new jobs created by 2030 against 92 million displaced, for a net gain of 78 million jobs globally. So, which door is actually correct? Most labor economists will tell you, honestly, neither extreme. The real story is quieter, messier, and a lot less quotable. Asamoglu's own estimate, based on years of studying automation, puts total job losses at just 2 to 4% over 5 years, heavily concentrated in customer service, back-office administration, and junior analyst roles. Exactly the jobs companies used to hand fresh graduates. Not the whole economy collapsing. One specific rung of the ladder, quietly disappearing. That is the most likely picture forming right now. Not mass unemployment, not a jobless utopia either. A visible, uneven transition, hitting the bottom rung of white-collar careers the hardest, while the rest of the ladder mostly holds steady, at least for now. Even the loudest early doomsayer eventually moderated his own tone. By mid-2026, Anthropic's CEO had noticeably softened his original warning, suggesting automation might expand the total amount of work people do, rather than simply erasing it. When the person who sounded the loudest alarm quietly adjusts the volume, that tells you something too. So, if the most likely outcome is a real but uneven disruption, the next honest question is, what are governments actually doing to prepare for it? The answer, so far, is a patchwork, moving considerably slower than the technology itself. The most concrete government action so far comes from Europe. The EU's AI Act becomes fully enforceable in August 2026, requiring strict obligations for high-risk AI systems and mandating every member state to stand up its own regulatory testing sandbox. It is not aimed directly at layoffs, but it is the clearest sign any government has actually moved from talking to legislating. Then there is the idea of a robot tax, taxing automated labour the way we tax human wages to fund retraining and safety nets. It is not new. European lawmakers actually rejected a version of this back in 2017, worried it would choke off innovation. But in 2026, with real disruption now visible, the idea is resurfacing, and this time from a very unexpected source. In April 2026, OpenAI itself published a proposal calling for exactly that: robot taxes on automated labour, a public wealth fund, and automatic safety net triggers that kick in during AI-driven job displacement. Read that again. The company selling the technology is now asking publicly to be taxed for the fallout of its own product. On basic income specifically, real pilot data already exists. An expanded version of the Stockton Guaranteed Income model found a 12% increase in full-time employment among recipients, plus a 25% drop in reported depression and anxiety. Meanwhile, a federal guaranteed income bill sitting in the US Congress has gone essentially nowhere since it was introduced. The data exists. The political will, so far, does not. So here is the honest state of government preparation heading into 2027. some real movement in Europe, a genuinely surprising proposal from inside the AI industry itself, and in the country building most of this technology, mostly gridlock. Institutions are simply not moving at the speed of the thing they are supposed to be managing.
Which brings us to the only part of this story you actually have direct control over. Not governments, not corporate press releases. You. Career researchers who actually score jobs by automation risk keep landing on the same 4 traits that make work resistant to AI: hands-on human contact, complex judgment under pressure, genuinely original creative thinking, and unpredictable physical environments. Nurse anesthetists, therapists, skilled trades, and creative direction all score near the top of these indexes for exactly these reasons. And this is not abstract. The US alone is projected to face a shortage of 500,000 skilled trades workers by 2027. Electricians, plumbers, technicians. While one part of the economy worries about white-collar automation, an entirely different part is quietly begging for hands-on human workers it cannot find fast enough. Here is the part that surprises most people. The smartest strategy right now is probably not avoiding AI-exposed work entirely. Remember, those jobs are currently growing fastest, not slowest. The strategy career researchers actually recommend is stacking real AI fluency directly on top of the expertise you already have, something most professionals can genuinely do in 30 to 90 days of focused effort. The World Economic Forum's own research points the same direction. The fastest growing skills through 2030 are not purely technical. They are a blend. AI and data literacy paired with distinctly human skills, critical thinking, adaptability, and emotional intelligence. Not one replacing the other, both stacked together, becoming the new baseline, the way typing itself quietly became a baseline skill a generation ago. So, which door actually wins by 2027? Realistically, nobody can tell you with certainty, and anyone who claims total certainty in either direction is probably selling you something. What the evidence actually supports is the quiet middle door, a real uneven disruption, concentrated at the entry level, moving faster than most governments and slower than most headlines would have you believe. Preparing for that reality does not require predicting the future perfectly. It requires paying attention to which rung of your own ladder is actually under pressure and building the one combination almost no forecast disagrees on: real expertise plus real fluency with the tools now sitting right next to you. If digging past the panic and the hype to find the actual evidence-backed middle ground is your kind of thing, subscribe. Next time, we walk through another headline everyone is shouting about and quietly check whether the data actually agrees.